afternoon, good evening, folks. We are here to talk about the ACA-900. So I'll give some folks a little bit of time to jump in and join us before we begin our review. And I have to go find that review deck. I think I got it. Awesome. All right. Hopefully y'all can hear me okay. And Chad, I can't recommend skipping out on work or doing this at the same time, but I might do the same thing. All right, got some folks coming in. For those that just joined us, we were looking at the ACA-900. So this will be a review of that training. And I'll go over as much of it as we can in an hour. There is a lot of content in this particular certification, though. Oh, it's happening. Dropping a quick poll. Let's see. I did this initial series back in May, I think. So as folks are coming in, I'll just drop a quick poll to see if you were in that with me. Tushar, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. Oh, and so far most of us were in here. Well, 4 votes, but 75% of folks in here. All right. Got my slides, got my coffee. Got some folks to study with. All right, we are going to get started, folks, just because we got so much stuff. Quick way of introduction. I'm Rob. If you were here with me before, I've been doing these sessions for quite a while, which is awesome. But I realized that there's a lot of Atlassian certifications and I don't have a lot of time to study them. So that's why I do these sessions live. I've been using Jira since about 2013. No worries, Tushar. That's why I'm doing these reviews. And I've been doing the ACA certifications. It's 4 or 5 weeks, and then I'll do a follow-up review, and that's what this is. So it's to go over as much of the content as we can, but also to get questions from everyone listening to see what specific topics or areas of it you particularly want to dig into. So I've got all the original slides. I'll just start going from the start to the end. But please use the chat to interact. I will be dropping Q&A, so that little poll you see at the top of your chat, just to interact with you and learn more about what's going on to see where I should focus. I am also doing this content and training stuff professionally now, so your support is incredibly important to that. Easiest way you can support me, hit the like button, little thumbs up down at the bottom, and also subscribe to the channel. I'm doing weekly videos on various Atlassian topics, but also please share this with someone else. These basic skills on Jira or other topics I cover are really important for those of us who have been doing it for a while. It seems easy and simple, but think back to when you first started using Jira and how confusing it might have been and how hard it was to do your job because you didn't know what a work item was or how to transition something through a workflow. So please also share this with other folks. This is part of a playlist for all the ACA-900, so I'll make sure it's in there just to make sure you have complete access to it. Our agenda, well, it's to review the ACA-900. We're going to talk about the course, a little bit about the certification connected to this, and then we'll be going back and forth between some slides and hands-on. The first thing to consider, though, and I'll go quickly through some of these slides just because there's about 50 of them, and I want to make sure we can cover as much ground as we can, but please stop me in the chat if you're like, hey, back up, or can you dig into this more? This particular course was originally intended to get folks prepared for success on that certification exam. It's called the ACA-900 Jira Software Essentials, I think is the full name. But you might have different reasons. For me, it was filling out my knowledge gaps. So when you're preparing for this or when you're learning something, it's always important to have a why. And your why will be your own, and it will be different, could be different from everyone else's. But please keep that in mind as you're studying and working on something. This particular review can help you validate your skills by earning that certification. My friend Chad, wants to rake in the bucks. I can't tell if he's saying that half jokingly, but earning certifications and building skills can certainly help, get you a higher paying job, help you get promoted or make more money in different ways. So that is a valid reason. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it because I'm forced to use these systems and I want to make sure I know how to use them so I can do my job more easily. So it's to get rid of that frustration, but also so I can help others learn. I think since the last review in this one, I did take and earn the ACA-900, so I met my goal of getting that certification. Now, the exam, if you're looking at taking this, that's a great point, Tushar. You'll hear me refer to it as ACA-900. I should really just start calling it Jira Software Essentials because that seems to be the name Atlassian is going with. If you have to sign up for the exam, you'll see the code ACA-900 and then the name Jira Software Essentials. So I'm going to start just calling it the name of the course or the name of the certification just to reduce that confusion. But that is a great call out. So if you're looking it up, use the name of the course, Jira Software Essentials. Now, the exam, if this is something you're going to pursue, is broken down into 4 major parts. Just basic concepts. Then we've got navigation, working with work items, and work item lifecycle, workflow, and boards. And these are kind of the basic skills that we can expect someone who's using Jira software to need to have to be successful. So today we're going to talk through most of this. The bulk of this is working with work items. So if you're considering what should I really focus on, it's going to be how do you work with a work item? How do you manipulate the fields? How do you get it through a workflow? All of those different things. That said, each of these areas is important because it's how to use the system. The concepts are also important because that's the why. Like, why are we doing it this way? Why does Jira have this feature? Those kind of questions can be answered there. So the next question, and it looks like about half of us were with me in the original one and half of us, were not, which is great. It's good to see some new faces and good to see some folks coming back. I guess the next question is, do you use Agile methodologies? Before. And this is kind of a leading question because many groups that use Jira are going to be software development, and many software development groups tend to use Scrum or Agile to help build their stuff. Jay, thank you so much for coming in and sharing that. That is amazing, my friend. I'm thrilled to hear that you found this helpful. It's hard for me to know if people get something out of this unless you tell me, so that is incredible. Congratulations. Now, the other thing Jay is pointing out, Atlassian changed the term issue to the term work item. You're going to see that old term in many places as Atlassian is updating their content. So just be aware if you go sit this exam, the current version of the exam uses the old terminology. So it's just something we'll have to be aware of for the next probably few years as Atlassian runs around and changes things. Now, Agile project methodology is important to understand because Jira software is built to support that. You have Scrum and you have Kanban are the 2 major types, especially in terms of Jira. There are other types of Agile, but for our purposes today, there's really only 2. And this is because when we go into Jira software, and we'll do this in a minute, we're going to see a board that is either a Kanban board or a Scrum board. So we'll just have to understand the differences. The biggest difference is Scrum uses sprints, 2, 3, 1 week periods of time to do work, whereas Kanban doesn't have sprints, but instead moves work through a series of statuses. Kanban is focused on more like process or workflow optimization, whereas Scrum is more focused on iterating and delivering chunks of work in set periods of time. Now, within Agile, you tend to have a few roles that are going to pop up. These can be reflected in Jira as like permission sets or as roles for access, or probably someone on your team even. Most people are going to be the developer. They build the thing. They, punch in the code. They're going to be in there using the work items, and that's mainly who this review is for. However, you'll also have a Scrum Master, someone who can help coach the team on best practice. What is the best way to do this thing? Importantly, the Scrum Master isn't a developer. So the Scrum Master will be there to assist and guide, not to do the work. And they're not really a project manager either. They tend to be the same human, the same person, but on paper, this role is different than a project manager in many ways. The next important person is the product owner, and this is someone who represents the customer. So when we think of Jira, this might be the customer representative who takes a look at the backlog and prioritizes it for us. And this is an important thing that'll show up maybe on the exam, but definitely in real life. It's the product owner who determines the prioritization. So the development team isn't going in and saying, oh, let's choose to do this one first. The development team goes in and says, oh, here is the next prioritized item. Let's grab that one. The product owner also isn't going to be working on work items. So this person is there to say, hey, the customer needs these things in this order. And if there's questions about that, they can engage with the team. But the product owner isn't a project manager. They're not setting the schedule. They're not managing the team. They're just the voice of the customer in the project. And of course, there's the actual customer. They're going to give feedback on the product, and they'll be hopefully giving feedback many, many times throughout the development of this thing. So as the development team, you might be presenting your work to a customer, and they might be saying, that's great, move this over here, change how that works, to help ensure your product can improve. So these 4 roles are important in the context of Jira. Again, most of us are going to be that developer who's in there doing the work, looking at the work items, moving things. I guess a leading question. What's the term that confuses you the most in Jira? Or what is the most confusing thing about Jira to you? Just drop something quickly in the chat. I'm always curious about this one. I have in my mind my own set of things. And maybe I'll drop another quick poll. What's the most confusing thing in Jira? All right, just a quick poll with 4 things I made up. The po-pumsum. Product owner, project manager, scrum master. That can all be one human, Tushar. That's where it can get challenging. The project manager and scrum master is one person, again, is fairly common. It's where if they're also the product owner, that's where it can be a bit more blurry. I'd be curious to learn more about how that works for your team. Now, terminology is important. And this is important both if you're going to go take the exam, because you have to look at, read the questions and understand what it's asking, because the questions are set up in such a way that they're not going to try to trick you, but there'll be a few that you might be like, that could be the answer. Like it sounds right. So you have to understand a bunch of terms. So when you read them on the exam or when you go need to ask for help, people know what you're talking about. For example, Jay has this question, boards versus dashboards. If I don't know clearly what a board is, that'll make it very hard to help out Jay, or it'll make it really hard for me to, interact and use that feature if I can't find it. Don't need to talk about that too much. There are different tiers of cloud. And again, please tell me to back up if you want me to focus on things. We'll be using Premium today. This shouldn't show up too much on the exam. The big difference with Premium is it has the artificial intelligence, the AI, Atlassian intelligence tools built in. So if there's a questions on the exam around that. However, this exam isn't going to quiz you on the difference between Premium and Standard, for example. But just be aware as you're using Cloud, depending on the tier you're on, you may have more or less features available. Now, there are different project types. I forget if this comes up on the exam, honestly. There is a company-managed project and a team-managed project. Both of them work fairly similarly in terms of I am just doing my job and I've got work to do. The big difference is in what the team can do and manipulate. So if you need help changing something on the project, it's much easier in this team-managed project. However, as a developer, as someone just using Jira, you're going to rely on your project manager or a project admin to go make these changes. So just keep in mind if you're struggling with it or have questions with the configuration, you just need to go talk to, depending on your company setup, it could be your project manager to help out. All right. Thank you, Jay. Have a great day. And congrats again. Okay, work items. This is going to be a lot of your exam and a lot of what we'll talk about today. And I'm going to pop into Jira Cloud Premium in just a minute so we can dig out. Tushar Rovo is not yet in standard. They've announced that they're going to put it into standard, but I haven't seen it go live yet. And Rovo, for folks who are unaware, is the AI tool that they're rolling out across all of Atlassian. Work items, though, are kind of the core of what we'll be looking at and doing. And this is what tracks all of our work. This is the thing that we're assigned that we have to go do. And work items have some number of fields depending on our setup. And so it's important that we know how to navigate these and manipulate them, because a lot of our exam will be around finding work items, searching for them, updating them, transitioning them. Just, again, this is where our job kind of lives, what we need to do. There are different types of work items. It depends exactly on your setup. You can have custom ones made, but there's this thing called an epic, which typically is a larger piece of work or even a project. And so you might be working on an epic that contains the entire project, or if it's a particularly large piece of work, you might have multiple epics within it. For example, you may have an epic to work on the front end engineering. You might have a separate epic for the back end, or you might have an epic to improve networking and a separate network to improve, data engineering pipelines. So it depends on the needs of the project, but keep in mind epics can contain other work items. And I'm going to pop over to Jira. I need to find my instance, and we're going to just start looking at some of these things. There we go. All right, so we are in Jira Cloud Premium, and pretty much everything I show you should work in every version of Jira Cloud. The biggest difference is the artificial intelligence tools are in Premium. This is the user interface, and this is relatively new. Relatively meaning 2 months old, I think, at this point. But over here on the left, I have my navigation menu and just a list of projects. One thing that you'll probably need to know for the exam is how to search for things. There is a search bar at the top, which you can get to with the /, and then it can be as easy as just typing in terminology. I want to find work items related to permissions. Okay, and there are none. Just permission? Still none. Okay, well, let's just try a blank search and see what comes up. Regex, there we go. That sounds complex enough. Awesome. Now, with the search, we may see some questions on the exam around this query language called JQL. I will just do a brief kind of how it works level. If you want to learn more about it, there's a QR code right under my head. That's a 2-hour course that really digs into it deep. And that's a discount code to give you a bit of a break on the price. But for the exam, you may have questions around searching using this JQL, this advanced search. This is an important skill for us to have because it's how we're going to find things. What you need to understand about it is you need a field. So maybe I have a field called assignee. And as I type, you'll notice this list changes. And it's equal to, I'll just find my name. So you have a field you're looking for, an operator, and then some kind of value. So everywhere the assignee is Rob, give those tickets to me. And that returns a bunch of tickets. Now we can make this more complex. So I can say, and maybe the project is equal to VA, virtual agent. One other thing to point out that I did here, projects will have a name that humans can read, VA, and a key. Virtual agent is the name, VA is the key. You can refer to it in either in the search. You'll notice it auto-completes it to the full name. But that key is also what shows up in the ticket number. VA14 is the 14th ticket created in that project. So this JQL is narrowing down my search. Again, you might have 1 or 2 questions around JQL on the exam, and it is something that I have found incredibly helpful to learn, especially more on the project management-y side, because it lets me quickly get into Jira and find things that I need. There is another search they call the basic search, where you can use just drop-downs to select the type of status you want or to search through text. But searching does show up on the exam, so make sure you take some time to go practice JQL and go learn it a bit. And you can't hurt it by searching. So you can't break Jira by doing an improper search. It'll just yell at you. It'll give you some kind of error. All right, I need a quick coffee break, folks. And just a reminder, if you're liking this, just hit the like button. That helps other people find it. Simplest way to support me and the work. So I'm going to just find a work item so we can see what these things look like. That one looks good. Actually, that one doesn't look good. I need to go find a work item in a software project. So I've mentioned projects a couple times. These are just containers of information. Depending on how your organization is set up, these can be used differently. They could encompass all of the work to accomplish one actual project. And they're going to change the name of projects to some other term soon. But on the exam, you're going to see this term project quite a bit. I'm looking for my mobile project. I'm pretty sure this is the one. Yes. All right. So I've mentioned that there are different types of projects or different types of Agile. This particular one uses sprints. And I can tell that because if I look right here, the board is called active sprints. This does show up on the exam. It is something you need to know. You can also look in the top right. And if you see a complete sprint button, that's telling you this is a Scrum project. And this is an important concept because this sprint will last only a period of time before a new board, a new list of things pops up. So on the exam, you'll be asked questions around Kanban versus Agile or Kanban versus Scrum. And, this button tells you instantly, hey, this is Scrum. Now I'll just pick one of these to open up. And this is the work item. And there's a lot of information that can be on here. Again, depending on your team setup, you'll have more or less fields. You'll have more or less links showing up. Some important things to know. The summary is just the name of the work item. And that's, just telling you what it's about. You can pin fields. I'll zoom in. A little tiny pin just to force things up to the top so they're more easy to find. That's more just a good tip. Fields can hide, though. So there's a more fields that I can expand. And there's an original estimate. I forget if this shows up on the exam, but there will be questions around estimating work and tracking time. This estimate might be 6 hours. I think that's how long it will take. And then you'll notice under time tracking, this has changed. It now says no time logged, 6 hours remaining. And so there'll be questions around that. And I'm going to just quickly add some time. Let's pretend we did work on this. So I just clicked on that bar and I can now say, hey, I've done 2 hours of work. And you'll notice that this bar is changing. There's now a bit of blue. If I go over, if I do 7 hours, you'll notice a little bit is red. So visually, Jira is telling me, hey, you've gone over the 6 hours you said you would. It's not going to stop me. It's not going to report me to anyone. It's just saying, hey, visually, you've gone over. And if you're under, there's a bit of gray. So you may have questions around, someone sees this time tracking bar and a bit is red. What does that mean? Again, red, you exceed the original estimate. And then blue, that's how much you've done. Now you can change the estimate. So it's possible to say, oh, originally I thought 6 hours, but really there's still 4 hours of work left. And you'll notice it's changed again. It says 5 has been logged. I'm over my original estimate, but there's still 4 hours to go. So Jira is helping me just visually see what it was. And this is important for our reporting later. But be aware, you can change these at any time. Jira is just going to keep track of that for you. And then I can save this. And again, this is telling me I'm over that original by 3 hours. So that's some time tracking. You'll also see things around comments. Not sure how much to say around comments other than that they live on tickets. And they can trigger notifications. I'll come back to notifications in a bit. But comments are where you should go to add anything you've done on the work item. So keep in mind it just lives at the bottom of the work item. And you do have some options to not make it visible. So you have some ability to control access to either work items or to comments. And hopefully I don't lock myself out of anything here. All right. We spoke about the nav bar, again, mostly on the left, and this is a habit change for most of us. We looked at some menus. Hey, Kaithra. And what was my poll? The most confusing thing is work items. Interesting. I guess for the folks who said work items are the most confusing thing, could you give me some more information in the chat? Like what confuses you about them? And I'm asking so I can dig in and hopefully help make them not confusing. But about half of us that responded said work items are the most confusing bit. So is it updating them? Is it moving them through a process? Like what about them what can I help you with? We spoke about projects. Apps, don't need to dig into that. Creating, hotkeys. All right, I'm going to swap out this poll real quick. And I'm just going to ask another question on how much experience we all have in Jira. Say 3 to 5. Again, just to get a sense of where I should be going. But please help me understand the work items thing. I want to make sure I help you all out. There are a ton of hotkeys. This might not be on the exam, but it's just good to know. You can always open this menu of hotkeys with shift and question mark, and that's the / on your keyboard. These are great. I use them a lot because I'm lazy. I don't want to move my arm too much to go to the mouse, but also it's quicker. I can, again, bring up that search just by hitting a / instead of having to go up and click in the menu or up in the field. You don't have to memorize these, though. Again, you can always bring them up shift question mark, and that's the button next to my right shift key. And here we are on work items. This is a lot. There's a lot of red stuff and a lot of arrows. I should probably rebuild this slide. But this is what we saw earlier, and there's different areas of information. This is, please get hands-on with this. Please go explore Jira. When I look at a work item, I just kind of know where things are because I've been using it so much. Chad, Control-K is a different hotkey. What does Control-K bring up? It does not bring up our list of hotkeys. It brings up something else. So when I look at a work item, I just kind of know where things are. Again, the thing to keep in mind, there can be fields hiding over here on the right. You'll have this more fields. And also, the fields that you have can differ based on the work item you're looking at. So different work item types will have different fields based on setup. This confused me when I first started using Jira because I didn't realize that this might be an epic, again, that project level thing, but a story, the piece of work that I have to break down, will have different fields on it. And so I thought things were missing. I thought I was kind of going crazy. So keep in mind as you traverse Jira, as you're using different types of tickets or working on different projects, you'll have different information on these work items. The next thing, I forget what's next, but we'll definitely talk about the status. Work item types we briefly spoke about. There are a few major work item types we need to be familiar with, especially for the exam. We briefly spoke about the epic. That's the larger piece of work. It can also be called a parent work item, and that's because it can have children. You can have a work item that's you can have an epic that is comprised of multiple stories. And a story, for the purpose of the exam, is a deliverable. It's something the customer wants, but it's non-technical. The usual structure is, as a blank, I need blank to do blank. As a live streamer, I need coffee so I can wake up. As a finance expert, I need invoices. I need an invoice number to self-increment so I can track them. As a professional video game player, you can think of these examples. These tend to come from the customer or from the product owner. And again, it's not telling me server response times or the code I need to use or technical things. It's just telling me what's the end goal. Kaithra, you didn't know they have flavors? Stories are grape flavored. That's because they're green. Epics are grape flavored, but they're purple grape. There's also a bug that you might see come up. And this is typically created in response to an incident or problem. And then a task. Tasks are typically made by the development team, and these tend to be technical. These tend to be a breakdown of a story. So these terms are important, and groups can use these however they want. But again, thinking through that exam, if I'm talking about a story, that gives me a clue. Oh, it probably came from the customer. It's probably non-technical. Or if I hear about an epic, I know, oh, that's probably not the work I'm working on. That's instead a container for something. And again, each of these work item types can have different fields connected to them, can have a different workflow, a different set of statuses they move through. There is also a special thing called a subtask. These can exist under tasks or under stories. They cannot have subtasks. So it basically goes epic and then task and then subtask. Now, subtasks have to exist on a parent. They can't exist by themselves, but they can exist in different sprints. And you'll see them visually on the work item. There's like a subtask menu or slightly indented on the board. You can convert a subtask to a task and vice versa. Welcome, Sarah. Told about flags. I think I know what you're talking about. I'll pop back into Jira Cloud in just a second and see if I can show those. So this structure of epic, task, subtask is important and does come up. Okay. Popping back into Jira quickly, I'm going to open up, actually, I'm just going to right click. And Sarah in chat mentioned this flag thing. If I add a flag, it's just going to visually, I'll just say flag. See, it changed color. It's now this weird yellow color. And it's got this little flag icon. This is just a way to visually call attention to some work items. It also shows up in this nifty new feature called the Sprint Insights, where there's a list of flagged work items. So this is something that, again, it depends on how your team chooses to work. You can use flags to, hey, I need help on this, or let's talk about this one in the sprint retrospective, those kind of things. But it is a way to visually draw attention to these work items. I need to go find, maybe I'll just cram in some subtasks. So to add a subtask, I can just click add and subtask. And I've been a bad YouTuber. If you like this, please hit the like button. We've got about 30 folks and about 6 likes, which is actually 7 likes, which is pretty good. The number's going up as I'm looking at it. Amazing. So please hit the like button if you like the content, or check out that JQL course right under me. All right, so I'll just click add subtask. Typically when I work with teams, I let the developers make whatever subtasks they want. So I tell the team, hey, I've got these tasks. You can break them up any which way. Go nuts. So I might have a read handwriting on signature screen. I might need, optical character recognition investigation. I don't know. I'll make up some things. What else do I need? Learn to read cursive. Ooh, there's a fun visual problem. I love finding bugs. So I'll have some number of these subtasks. Now, these subtasks are their own work items. So if I click into these, it's going to bring me to a screen that shows me, hey, this is a whole other ticket. And this can be tracked with its own status, with its own fields, with its own information. And this can be confusing. Now, up in the top left, I'll have these breadcrumbs. Right now, I'm in the ticket MOBL 40. That's the key. And it's telling me, oh, it's a child of MOBL 12. So I can always go up to the parent just by clicking here. And I can actually see that this one has a parent, MOBL 4. And so I can keep going up and up and up. Now, if I go back to the subtask, one thing that I didn't know, there's this actions menu. And you can actually convert it to its own work item, to its own task. So with one click, I can go through this menu and I can say, you know what? I need this to be a story. This has to be promoted. Or, whoops, I made a mistake. This should be a bug. So I can move it through this flow that will convert it from a subtask into a task. And I should also be able to go the other way. I can make it go from a task to a subtask. So I'm calling this out specifically because I didn't know this existed. And I've seen questions on different exams around it. But I can go back and forth. I can say, oh, I made another whoopsie. Was it mobile 12? Yes, I remember the number. And so I'm able to move this work item between these just by going to that actions menu. So that's typical, we want to make sure we're making the work items in the correct type, but we can go back and forth using that actions menu. And that's our subtask. Again, it lives under the task. In a non-software project. I didn't realize it didn't add color to the board, Sarah. I will have to go tinker with that later. Flags in non-software. What Sarah's referring to is Jira is stereotypically used by software teams. However, non-software teams can also use it. For example, marketing is the one that we seem to see a lot. And we actually have a very even split in terms of how long we've been using Jira. It's almost 25% across the board between 0 and 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and 5 plus. I was not expecting such a perfect split. All right. Workflows. I'm going to drop another poll and just see what's confusing about workflows. And I don't know if you can all hear those geese, but those are very loud geese. Workflows are how a work item moves through a process. And this is where a lot of teams get, I'll say, conflated or mixed up. The workflow should be representative of an ideal process. So in this example, I have a backlog, and then I select something for development, and then I'm working on it, and then it's completed. That makes sense. Now, the workflow, the status isn't like what I'm doing to the ticket. It's not what I did to complete it. It's not anything else. It's just letting me know, hey, in this series of steps that we all agree on we have to do, it's on this step called in progress. Now, teams also tend to overly complicate their workflows. I worked with a team that had like a 47 status workflow. So imagine 43 more boxes in here describing different things. So if you see that, you may raise your hand and say, hey, this seems complicated. This is not an ideal workflow, but this is a very good one because it's very simple to know what to do. Now you'll see these little arrows. It says all and it's pointing. This is saying every status can move into backlog. Every status can move into selected for development, etc. These are called global transitions because they can go everywhere. Most of the time you won't have a global transition. It'll have certain statuses can go to different statuses. So for example, I might go from backlog to selected for development. I can't go from backlog to done though. And that's because my team has decided, hey, we want to control this and ensure we go through these steps because we need certain things to happen, certain approvals, certain updates, certain whatever. So keep in mind, you may not be able to move a work item from any status to any other status. As I've mentioned, the status is not who's working on it. It's not why it's stuck. It's not a priority. You will see teams do all of these things. And that's where you should raise your hand and say, hey, this doesn't quite make sense. This guy I saw on YouTube who was amazing, and I hit the like button because he had really good content. See how I wove that into me just talking? Said that the status should just be part of, where it is in our process. Can we re-examine this? Okay, we spoke a bit about transitions. And we're going to pop back to Jira and see a workflow. Up in the top right of work items will be this button. It will be different colors. It could be gray, it can be blue, it can be green. Gray statuses are a to-do status. Blue are in progress, and then green is done. And so it's just a grouping of these. They'll have different names based on your work item. So different work item types will have different workflows. Here I'm looking at an epic. And I can see this epic has a workflow that lets me move any status to any other status. It's got this little any. Now there's also a lightning bolt. And that's visually telling me when I transition it, something else might happen. A screen could pop up that requests more information, for example. And so I always look at these, and you can always get to this. You don't need special access. If you can see the work item, you can see the workflow. Just click on the status and then click on View Workflow, and you'll see what it is. So anytime I go to a new project in Jira or a new work item that I'm unfamiliar with, I crack this open and I just look at what's in there, because this is kind of your map. This is your guidance on how tickets can move. And this can save you a lot of frustration when you try and move work items. For example, if I'm a developer, I need to know where I can move these, so I put it in the right spot. To transition the work item, all you have to do is click on the name of the status, and you'll see it update. And now it's in the to-do status, or now it's in the testing status. I'm going to pop open a different work item. This is a story, and hopefully this has a different, nope, it's got the same exact one. It is possible for different types of tickets to have identical workflows, and it's also possible for different tickets to have different workflows. What I'm doing is looking at this board, and these little icons tell me what type of work item it is. So this green thing is a story. This red one is a bug, and it looks like a bug. So I'm going to open that one. And I think this one has the same workflow. Great. I will try one more thing and just go into a different project entirely. Okay, good. So this is a different workflow. And this is probably the simplest workflow you could have. 3 statuses: to do, in progress, done. So just showing that different tickets can have different workflows. So another source of my frustration when I started, I would open up a different ticket and I'd say, wait, why can't I move it between these 2 statuses? Or why doesn't this status exist? And that's because the process to solve different types of tickets can be different. Let me go back to my Cowboys. Most folks were confused by transitions. If you have specific questions around transitions, drop them in the chat, please. Because I've got another question that relates more to like Agile methodology. And this is important, and it's something I didn't really cover, but where did tickets come from? Or a better question is, who can add tickets to a project in the context of Agile? So how do these tickets get in here? Who can create them? Is the question. And this is from the ideal standpoint. I fully recognize that in our own companies we'll have different processes and different variants on all this stuff. But in the ideal state, who can be going in and adding these work items or these tickets? Okay, I've spoken about boards quite a bit. Again, a lot on this screenshot. We'll jump back into a board in a moment. The big thing to know about boards is there's 2 types. There's Kanban and there is Scrum. All boards, though, will have columns that represent things, and all boards will have the ability to search and filter. Again, this is an important concept in your job so you can find things. It's also important if you're going to go take the ACA-900, the Jira Software Essentials exam, because a lot of questions relate to how do you find stuff and where do you go to find stuff. Now, on every board, there's a little search box. That search box, it only searches in this board. So that's probably the best way to find something in an existing sprint or on your board. Just use the search that's right there. You can also have things called quick filters, which your project admin can set up, where it's one click and it filters based on some criteria. So be on the lookout for those. On the board, work items are represented by cards. So that's kind of what we've been seeing. Now, these columns are mapped or connected to at least one status. So a column has to be connected to a status, but it can be connected to multiple statuses. For example, I might have a column just called in progress, and that could be mapped to 3 different statuses, in progress, pending approval, and one other, because I just want my team focused on 3 or 4 columns. You can just click and drag between them, and that will transition the ticket. So that's the same as clicking on that button up in the top right that we saw, and moving it into a different status. You'll spend a lot of time on boards working on them, but also on the exam. There's a lot of questions around manipulating the board, navigating the board, who can do what on the board. As just a regular team member, you cannot change the configuration of the board. You have to go to some kind of admin to go make those changes. So if you're struggling or if it doesn't make sense, you'd have to go talk to your team and figure out who your admins are. I mentioned you can just click and drag between statuses or between columns. And the other thing to know about are these, they call them swim lanes. So the columns are vertical. We can have rows go across that group work items by different things. This can also be very useful. In this example, I've got it grouped by person or assignee. So all of Rob's tickets show up here, all of Kyther's ticket would show up here, all of Chad's tickets would show up there. So different ways we can visualize these work items and that you'll see be used to help call attention to things or help people find their work items. So this is a board. This particular board, again, is an Agile board. And I know that right away because it's got this complete sprint in the top right. And also, and then from here I can just, again, click and drag. And you don't see much happen. You'll see these counters change. And this is just the number of work items in the column. But that ticket will also change its status to whatever was connected to the column. Now I can just search through the board. I can look for fingerprint. I see that word. And now I just see work items with the word fingerprint in them. I can also filter it by assignee just by clicking on the little icon up here. I'll zoom in a bit. I can filter it down just by epochs or by work item type. And these are those quick filters. You can optionally show them as buttons. I tend to do this just because it's easy to click. Where are mine? Would have been recently updated. The quick filters, again, are set up by an admin. So just keep in mind what's available is based on your team's setup. So that's our search. And then over in the right side, where did they move it? There we go. There's this group by option. So I'll take off the grouping, but I might then group by assignee, and we'll see a change. So I now have these rows by assignee in this sprint. This is something I personally do a lot when I work with boards because when I'm doing a sprint review, I want to pop in and quickly to see how is Alana doing. So again, this is a Agile Scrum board. I'm going to go see if I can find a Kanban board very quickly. Maybe I'll just make one up. All right. And this is a Kanban board. Now, I know it's a Kanban board for two reasons. One, it says Kanban board right here. But two, it doesn't have that anything about sprints. So this is visually telling me, hey, this is not around Scrum. And Kanban is focused around limiting work in progress. So I'm going to quickly... Where did they put it? Aha. I'm going to quickly just add some limits. Excuse me. Now, the focus of Kanban is to help teams focus and eliminate bottlenecks. I'm kind of oversimplifying, but in this example, I've told Jira, hey, make this red if there's more than 5 work items in here, and make it yellow if there's less than 3. So if we see columns, and I'll quickly just get all these out of here. There we go. So now I can see it's gray. And if I bring this down below 3, it's yellow. So when I visually see the column change colors, that's also an indication, oh, hey, you've got work items in a Kanban board. So again, red is exceeding some kind of maximum, and yellow is under it. Now you'll notice as I drag items over in progress, I have options. And so this column is mapped to multiple statuses. So I need to be careful here. I was just blindly flinging things, and those all ended up in the accepted status. That might not be the right one. Maybe I meant to put it in progress. But that's what it looks like if there's multiple statuses. You'll have the option of which one to just drop it onto, and that will then update the ticket status. Awesome. And 100% of my respondees have said anyone can put in a ticket in an Agile project. And that is typically correct. Typically, Everyone who is in an Agile project can put them in. You're not going to be like limited or gated based on access or project role in terms of only developers can put in tickets or only customers. All right, folks. I can keep talking, but please drop some questions in. The chat's been pretty quiet, so I assume that means you are all perfect experts right now and you don't have any questions. And I'm going to have a sip of coffee while you all ponder and consider what you should ask. All right, moving on. As a reminder, please hit the like button. We're up to 9 likes and about 30 folks. There are other ways you can support me. My friend Chad is one of my coffee sponsors. I also have a Knowledge Manager membership level, but please consider becoming a channel member. And that's one way to help support what I do. And then also you can check out that JQL course right under my head. That QR code goes to a discount coupon. I've mentioned notifications a few times. Now, Jira is great at burying you in emails, so it's important we know how to control that. Out of the box, you're going to get notifications for a lot of different things. You can, however, go up to your settings and open up notification settings. I have a lot of other options because I'm an admin, but if you open notification settings, you have a lot of control over what notifications you get. Again, by default, you're going to get a lot. I typically recommend keep assignee and reporter turned on, because those are notifications around work items you're assigned to or you've reported. So typically you want those. However, you might want to change this setting. This is saying every 3 minutes, send me an email if there's notifications. This is excessive to me. If you do a lot of work in Jira, you're going to be getting this every 3 minutes. So I typically change this to like once an hour or even once a day. And that's because I'm in Jira a lot. Again, we're working on boards. We're software devs. We're probably going in and updating tickets quite a bit. So I change this to daily frequently. At the bottom, though, you have a lot more granular control. There we go. So you can turn them off for all work items, but you can also just turn off the email. So in product, there's a little bell icon that'll light up. It's up here in the top right. And this will keep track of your notifications in Atlassian. So you may choose to turn off email, but keep on in product. And so that's one way to help, protect your inbox. And you can also add project-specific notifications. In this example, I've turned on notifications for one project. So you could turn off all emails across the board, except for this one critical project you're working on. Or you could turn off getting comments notifications, except for this one project you really need information about. And you can add as many projects as you need just by clicking Add Project Notification and just finding the name of the project. So that's one simple, easy way to help manage and control your inbox, because otherwise you'll be getting notified anytime you're assigned something, you're at mentioned, there's a change to a work item, you create one, it's moved around, there's a status update. It becomes overwhelming very quickly. So taking just a couple minutes to customize your notifications will be very, very helpful. All right, no questions. I love it. How to take the exam. So up until now, we've spoken around Jira Software Essentials, like what's in the exam. And again, I've gone through this pretty quickly. But to take the exam, we just need to pop over to Atlassian's community. And I'll put this link in the chat too, under Learning, under Certifications, and View Associate Certifications. And it lives right here. So under Learn More, and I'll put this in the chat, this is the official site for it. Definitely check this out. It's got details on the exam, like what you're expected to do, who it's for, that breakdown we saw at the start, as well as things like the price. So this exam is $100 to take it. You get an hour to sit down and complete up to 30 questions. Not a lot of time, but that's 2 minutes per question. So that's, when you think of it that way, for me, that helps, because that's a lot of time. 2 minutes to ponder, what should I answer? You'll be given a set of multiple choice questions with 3 or 4 possible answers. 2 or 3 of those will be what they call distractors. 1 will be correct. And it probably won't be, like define this term. It'll be either a brief scenario or trying to suss out your understanding of these things. but they're not going to be any gotcha questions. Atlassian isn't trying to trick you or like, mess with your head. So that's the good news. You can take it in person or you can take it at home online. I prefer to take it at home online just because the nearest testing center is a 20-minute drive away and I want to save a bit of time. If you take it at home, though, you have to have a clean environment. So I have to clean off my desk and put everything away, which is actually a good thing. And no one can interrupt you. You also can't get up and like go use the bathroom. So for some folks, they say, you know what, I'd rather go do it in person because if you go to a testing center, you'll lock your phone in a box. There'll be a proctor there, but you sometimes can get up and use the restroom. So that's the good news. Also at home, if your internet dies or if your computer crashes or if any technical glitch pops up, that can be frustrating at best or result in an exam failure at worst. So sometimes you may want to consider going in person because that'll be easier. You don't have to worry about those technical issues. You can schedule it here through the certification portal. Has a lot of information around policies, what you can do and can't do. But one last thing to call out is under here, start prepping for free. There are a lot of great other learning resources. So we've got these three. That's new. All of this learning is free on Atlassian, but this is what they've put together to help you pass your exam. They also have at the bottom certification prep resources. And these are really useful. They're 4 little, 5 minutes, but they cover the basic concepts or other things. And these are exam questions. So you won't see this exact question on the exam, but this will give you a good feeling of what the questions are like, how they're structured, what you might run into. So I always recommend go through and take, these certification prep resources, and this will give you a good feeling of what it can be like. Tushar prefers going into the testing center, and that's where, it's up to each of our own preference. I used to live closer to an exam center, so I'd go in. For me, though, the hour it's going to take me to drive there and back isn't worth the annoyance of doing it at home. All right, I think I've got... what's next? So that was a quick review of the ACA-900. This was originally done over 4 weeks where we dug into each of those sections more, but I wanted to offer this to help kind of jog folks' memories. And if you're looking at sitting that exam, I'd recommend, giving yourself 2 to 3 weeks to study before you take it. Now, typically companies may have a stipend for learning, so you might be able to go to your boss or your learning team or your HR team and say, hey, I want to go earn this exam. It relates to my job. Will the company pay for it? So that's a great way to get, these credentials and certifications. But please keep getting hands-on. Even if you don't want to earn the certification, the stuff that we spoke about will really get into your head more and your muscle memory if you go do it. So please go practice in Jira, and please keep engaging. Keep talking to other folks. Come watch my videos, watch other people's videos. Keep learning more about the system, because while our job isn't to use Jira, Jira helps support us doing our job. So the more we know about it, the easier it's going to be for us to solve those problems. And again, I'm now doing all this professionally. So the easiest thing you can do to help me out, just hit that like button. We've got 10 likes. Love that. A little thumbs up under me. I have a Udemy course, and a discount code right under my head on that QR code on learning JQL, the query language we briefly spoke about. We also have a Discord community. It's not just for the certifications. It's for any Atlassian-related content and ideas. So check us out in Discord. And be on the lookout for more. I'm doing another ACA level certification starting at the end of August, the 22nd. I'm taking a week or 2 off. And that'll be around Jira board configuration. So really digging deep into how do we set up a Kanban board or a Scrum board. And so that kind of relates to this. But thank you all for learning with me. I really appreciate, the 30, 40 folks who are sticking with me to learn. I'll keep the chat open for a bit, so drop in your questions. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next session. I've got some stuff coming up next week. Then I'll take a week and a bit off. And I hope to see you around here again soon. Join us in that Discord. Check out that Udemy course. And please hit the like button. Easiest way to help me out. All right, all. Thank you again. Have a great day wherever you are, and I look forward to seeing you around here again soon.